All right, everybody, sorry for the slight delay. Could you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Mr. Ankuma? Aye. Mr. Castillo's not here yet. Ms. Gill?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence?
Here.
Mr. Reitinger?
Yes, here.
Ms. Ward?
Yes.
And Mr. Webb is not here yet. Okay.
Okay, yeah, Lawrence is going to be a little late, probably showing up around 8 because he's got business out in, I think, Maryland, but he will be here. We're trying to get to Justin. He's asked for remote participation, so we will get to that in a minute, but if you could all join me in standing for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, could I get someone to move that our chairman can participate remotely, please?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. When he calls in, he can participate, and like last time, it'll also be for the closed meeting as well. Could I also get a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
Do we have public comment on here, or are we?
Yes, we do. It's right after we adopt the agenda.
Oh, I don't see it on the agenda that I have. Okay.
Oh.
My agenda.
Sorry, I think you may need to refresh because we
Okay.
had so many different changes, but it's on this one, so we're
Okay.
fine.
Thanks.
So is that a motion
Yes,
to?
I move to adopt the agenda.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we will move on to public comment right now. In accordance with School Board Bylaws 2.3, the time for each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Additional written statements may be submitted to the clerk for dissemination to board members. And for the record, please state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes. My first speaker is Jennifer Jacobs, followed by Melissa Dana. And if you could, just come up and sit right near the microphone so that you can be picked up by the cameras, that would be wonderful.
Ready?
Yep, please.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Jennifer Jacobs. I'm at 311 Poplar Drive. A few weeks ago, I mentioned to a colleague at work that one of my children was having a behavior challenge in school, and my colleague expressed concern as to how the schools would handle it. I said, actually, we're in a phenomenal school, and they're handling it really well. They're very supportive. My colleague looked a bit surprised, but then said, oh, are you in Falls Church City Schools? As if that explained everything. Schools this well known for the quality of their personnel are a real treasure. I tell you this story because I'm here to ask you to reconsider an issue that I believe chips away at the heart of our treasure, the budget decision to not provide substitutes for classroom paraprofessionals. This decision impacts us negatively in 2 ways. First, it has a direct impact to the classroom on days when the para is out. Kindergarten is hit hardest by this. This year, our kindergartners are already at a disadvantage by having class sizes over the important limits that you have set. This makes the full-time para more critical than ever, and the effect of not having substitutes much more significant than was probably anticipated last spring. Kindergartners have a full-time para for good reason, and first graders similarly need their paras. Removing that support for even a limited number of days is not okay. Secondly, this issue affects the work environment for the paras and their teaching partners on a continuous basis. It sends the message to the para that perhaps their role isn't really that important. To this, I argue that, in fact, the paras are one of our great differentiators, particularly at Mount Daniel. They're at the very heart of why my colleague knew immediately what school system I was in. This policy also places an unfair burden on one small group. If a para uses a personal day, maybe to take care of their own sick child, for example, then they know that they are creating a difficult day for their classroom. Imagine the personal stress that this creates for the paraprofessional. How will we attract and retain the amazing personnel that we need if we treat them not as irreplaceable, but as not even worth replacing when they're out? The teachers and paras who interact with our children every day are our most critical assets. They are the ones who make our schools outstanding, not having the latest technology or facilities, in my opinion. I request that you reopen discussion of this line item. Not only is this reasonable, but it reflects a wise and common practice when overseeing implementation of a plan, flexibility. Because, as we used to say in the military, no plan survives first contact. It isn't as important to get a plan perfect the first time as it is to adjust quickly as needed once the plan goes into effect and more information becomes available. Since the budget discussions last spring, we have at least 2 areas of additional relevant information. We all have a more clear understanding of the meaning and level of negative impact of the budget line reduction in substitute costs, and kindergarten classes are larger than was anticipated. If savings cannot be found elsewhere, please at least embark on an open and thoughtful discussion with those most affected in order to explore alternative approaches for this line item. Please don't dismiss this as something to fix in next year's budget. This year's classes need a change this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Melissa Dana, followed by Rohini Winters.
Melissa Dana, 314 North Lee Street. I wanted to first say thank you to the school board for your recent decision to respond to public comment when possible. And I'm hoping, hint, hint, that maybe I'll get a response tonight to a couple of questions that I have about the Technology Advisory Committee. As you know, last week we had our first meeting, and as you can probably guess, I'm ecstatic to have the opportunity to participate in that committee, and I thank you all. I thank Dr. Jones for the opportunity to participate. Unfortunately, I was very disappointed to arrive at the meeting and be told that the sole purpose of the committee is to advise the school board what device our school system should be using, and further narrowly defined to decide if we should be using MacBooks or Chromebooks. At the first meeting, we went around and everybody was allowed the opportunity to explain why they were interested in participating in this committee, and the reasons people gave were really comprehensive: to use technology in a more balanced or purposeful manner, to address the time management problems that come with computer use, to explore our curriculum, to use data to make more effective decisions regarding technology, to help students be prepared for future careers in technology, to address the overuse of screens and the problems linked to that, like depression, anxiety, ADD, and lost opportunity for developing social skills, to explore how we might reduce the amount of money we spend on technology. There were a lot of other reasons, but I didn't hear anybody say that they were interested in discussing MacBooks versus Chromebooks. Falls Church City is an amazing community filled with people who are well-educated, intelligent, creative, interesting, innovative, insightful, and eager to help. And this committee, I think, is a truly fantastic opportunity for the school board to benefit from the intellectual resources of our community for the purposes of educating our children. And as I looked around that room on Wednesday, the tremendous creative problem solving and critical thinking capabilities that I saw gathered there, I thought should not be wasted on answering superficial and loaded questions like what device should we use. So my question for the school board is, who decided on the purpose of this committee, and would you please consider demonstrating that you value the intellect and the input of our community by officially expanding the written purpose of this committee to encompass deeper and more meaningful input? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Rohini Winters, followed by Allison Kuchma.
Good evening, Rohini Winters, 324 Grove Avenue. I'm here tonight to ask you for a couple of things. One is to readdress, maybe in the spirit of what Dr. Jacobs asked, along the lines of adjusting quickly after we make a change. We recently made a change to the busing program, plan, schedule, routes for MEH and GMHS. I don't have a bus rider on at those schools right now, except on an occasional Friday when I ask my Girl Scouts to ride the bus to get to the Scout House. I researched the U.S. Department of Transportation and NHTSA guidelines for the safe transportation of students on school buses. The U.S. Code establishes the Secretary of Transportation's role in promulgating safety standards and guidelines for states to implement. Therefore, Virginia Department of Education and Virginia Department of Transportation work together to ensure that our schools run safe bus routes to school. Specifically, on school bus seating, I think we are letting our kids fall into the aisle. We are letting them keep their baggage and book bags in the aisles. And we are, in fact, letting kids crouch down in the aisle or stand while the bus is moving. And I think you all should take like immediate action to address this and stop it from happening, lest we become, as a school system, liable for an accident or injury to one of our students. I know when my kids are in anybody's transportation, I'm a little bit anxious. When they go on their road trips, when they go on their band trips, or even when they go on a scouting outing in a POV, I'm a little anxious. And I just think that we can do better than expect 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders to fit in a seat, 3 to a seat. If you haven't been on a school field trip recently, I suggest you go on one as a chaperone, and you will see that 5th graders no longer all fit 3 to a seat. I went with to the Science Expo last year. They don't all fit. My daughter was the little one who sat on the edge, and she was constantly falling into the aisle, and I was across from her so I could prop her up. It's not okay for us to do that to our kids. It's not safe. It's not fair to the bus driver who has to tell the kids, go 3 to a seat, when they can't physically fit. So look at Bus D if you want. That was the bus I had my Girl Scouts on. Now they're riding Bus H. But please readdress and look at your changes and go back and revisit them to make sure that you got it right. My other request is that you reinstate substitute pairs for the Mount Daniel School. I think there's a lot of, I don't have a kid at that school either. So I am here as a member of the community who hears a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Allison Kuchma.
Good evening. Allison Kuchma, 813 Fulton Avenue. I would just like to sort of follow on something that Melissa Dana said, and I would like to request that the board value the parents in the special education community, and please invite the parents of students with disabilities to our special education meetings directly via email. I thought it was great in the morning announcements. There is now a monthly newsletter going out, and that's great. But in that newsletter, we could, if you can do that, you can obviously invite parents of students with disabilities. So I'd really appreciate that. But what I wanted to ask tonight about is, and I just really like to understand when the community gets to ask questions, or when the board would ask questions in a public session about some questions about Mount Daniel. I still don't understand why we needed to buy the $65,000 generator as opposed to rent it. If it was just a temporary power situation, that's $65,000 that would probably pay for substitute paras at Mount Daniel. The $165,000 contingency budget that was completely spent, I heard in public statements that some of that work was planned work. Well, if it was planned work, why was it not part of the Grunley contract? Why was not the $23,000 in painting that was done that summer, why wasn't it part of the painting contract? There was $72,000 in flooring, and there was $29,000 in temporary power. If we hadn't started the construction work, what was that for? And so I just have questions. And the last question is just how much is the redesign going to cost us? Is there a number to not exceed, and are we going to find out what that number is? How much more are we spending on Mount Daniel? So those are my questions. Thank you very much for your work.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else, whether or not you fill out a slip? No? Okay, we'll close public comment. Moving on to approval of GM Model United Nations college request. Dr. Jones?
Oh, sorry, that's me. This is just a request for our students who want to travel and they need to have that travel brought to the school board. The Model UN conference is going to Williamsburg. It is an overnight trip from November 11th through the 13th, and they're asking for your approval, and staff would recommend that you approve that for our Model UN.
Okay, any questions?
Just one quick note. In the actual body of the document, it says the 13th through the 22nd as opposed to the 13th. So
Okay.
I knew it was the 13th from the title and
Okay.
because it only talked about 3 days, but that probably should be fixed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sorry, your time's up.
I do run on its mouth.
One question. For trips like this, what needs to come to us now and what doesn't?
Well, in the old days, and quite frankly, this is also one of these policies that we weren't quite finished with when now Tom is gone. So the new attorney is going to need to pick it back up because we've been working on it for the last really year and a half on our trips policy. It used to be that once you approved, if it was an annual trip that happened every single year, we didn't have to bring it back to the school board. But what happens is over time, as you have a new superintendent or a new school board, people didn't know really what trips were considered annual. So we're trying to bring any overnight trip and any travel to the school board so that you're well informed about where our kids are.
Okay, so that's the practice, and we'll deal with
Yes.
getting a better policy.
The policy
We
we've
have a new
been,
attorney.
right, it is with our new attorney, and it was looking also at, as you know, some of the international travel issues over the last year, which we've talked about quite a bit. And we were looking at some other model policies where Fairfax County was updating theirs and trying to get some idea of what other school districts are doing and how they're handling it. But we're not quite there.
So right now, anything
Right.
overnight will come to us.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Any questions? No? Okay. Could I get a motion to approve it with the one technical change that was added?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that is passed. Now moving on to school board guidance for advisory committees.
These are, if you remember last year, when the school board updated the policy, it's trying to give guidance to all of your advisory committees about what are some of those tasks that during the year would be good to have their assistance with. And this is working with looking at what the committee did last year, what they said in their report, and then these are coming from your senior staff that serve on those committees. And so they have all seen them, and the chairs of these committees have seen them, and some of you already chimed in actually and said, yes, that was fine, because we sent these out to the committee so that they could see what was there. We haven't had any feedback with any changes requested.
Okay. Michael?
Just some semantics, but the very first one with the ESOL, I would, for what it's worth, recommend the word look be replaced with something like review the EL program evaluation, if that works. Just a look at it doesn't sound very detailed. And then the other thing, and maybe this is closer to my heart, is with the gifted. I think I originally recommended that when I saw this for the first time, I recommended that it be made clear on the second line, the first sentence, the last word, where it says from kindergarten to graduation, to the extent they're sort of mini graduations. Could we put high school graduation in there, unless that's overkill?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, does anyone have any
That's easy.
problems with that? They all make sense. Okay. Anyone else have any other changes? The reason I'm actually to blame for having this come to us, since it's school board guidance, I thought it was important that the school board as a board vote on it to say that it is actually school board guidance, as opposed to it going to the liaison and the liaison saying it's fine. To me, that wasn't quite enough. So
No objections here.
that's all. Okay. All right, unless there's any other discussion, could I get a motion to approve with the two changes?
I move that the school board approve the guidance to the advisory committees for the 2016 to 2017 school year as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
No. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope. All right, the guidance is passed. All right, we're actually a little ahead of schedule. Any word from our chair?
He just said 5 minutes, so I'm telling him we're just starting now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, just to make sure everybody knows, and sorry for all the back and forth on agendas and everything, what we're going to do is we'll have our 3 presentation for the search firms for a permanent superintendent. Their proposals will all be made public at the end of this meeting, or, well, maybe tomorrow morning, since I don't want to make people have to go back and, post things tonight. But we will hold them all to 30 minutes. It could be less than 30, but nobody will be able to go more than 30. I'll let people know when we hit 20 minutes. And unless there are any questions, we can just go straight into it. You have the order. We have BWP first here. VSBA will be phoning in, and then Hazard Young will also have someone come and speak. So unless there are any questions, we'll just start. Sir? You could just introduce yourself and your firm, and right now you were all handed out the presentation and some other materials.
Have board members had a chance to read the proposal?
Yes, we've had that for a
Look
couple
at it,
weeks.
yes.
Well, then it won't be necessary for me to go into some of the details.
Well, part of the reason for this is we're doing it as a public meeting, so you're also speaking to the public, not just to us. So,
I think I'll cover it in the PowerPoint.
yeah, you don't have to go into immense detail, but don't skip it just because we've read it.
Okay. My name is Kevin Kastner. I'm a former superintendent in Albemarle County Public Schools for 11 years and retired in 2006. Since that time, I have been involved with BWP in doing superintendent searches. Also, I'm executive director of Cambridge Strategic Services, where we do strategic planning. In a few minutes, I'll talk to a little bit about my colleague, Dr. Wayne Harris. But BWP, if you'll be able to note, we have a website, and the website pretty much goes through all the history. It's been around since the 80s. It was one of the first superintendent search firms. It's after three people. I'll just call it black, white, purple. But there's three people from the Midwest, and it's a merger of firms, and probably have done over 800 superintendent searches. One of the things that I think you'll find that particularly for BWP, particularly recently, in the last 5 years ago, we've done over 15 searches. I would encourage you to talk to any of the board people. We think we've been very successful. We've had good working relationships with the school boards, and I know you all know each other. But Spotsylvania, we've done Hanover twice, Stanton, Goochland. You can see some of the systems. They're similar in your size. Alexandria, Winchester, again, we learn a lot about your community through that. Chesterfield was one of our most recent ones. I don't know if we have Prince Edward and Petersburg. So we have a great familiarity. We think it's really important that a search firm have a local interest as well as a national reach. So regarding that, the search team, myself and Dr. Harris, Dr. Harris is a former superintendent in Roanoke. He was there for 11 years. We retired about the same time. He also was an area superintendent in Fairfax. One of the other things about Wayne, he is from the doctorate program in Harvard, and the reason that's important is they have an extensive network that has contacts throughout the United States, and for a search such as this, a lot of those contacts might come into play. He also is involved in aspiring superintendents, where each year there's about 30 or 40 people that want to be future superintendents go through an intensive training over a period of several days throughout Virginia, and we both are part of that program, which creates a significant access to a lot of young people that haven't yet reached the point, and some of them now, many of them are superintendents. The fact that we have a national reach, we have associates superintendents, and one of the things I will tell you that there's really an advantage of having been in a chair, working with school boards, being a superintendent. It gives you a filter. It also gives us an opportunity to, when we share with the board, to tell them about the advantages or disadvantages of some choices you might be making. So the fact that we do have a national board of directors, we have colleagues across the country. If we don't know somebody, someone's going to know somebody. And that's a real advantage because no one wants surprises on this. So what I would like to try to do is to talk to you a little bit about how the process works. You're going to find, and again, the little small pamphlet, you're going to find in any presentations, we're going to be far more similar than different. The fact that you have a copy of the PowerPoint on there and the slides is probably too small to read, but at least I just wanted to put them out there. But we're trying to find a match, find someone in the most important decision you're going to make to help facilitate it with you. in every shape of the way, you as a school board are in control. We work for you. We advise you. In doing that, what we're trying to do is we establish a process. We're trying to look for the best candidate. We think it's very important that the transparency of the process and the community engagement on the front end give everybody an opportunity to have access, to have comments that we will record, and we will find a way to organize that and present that to you. It's true that any citizen can come to you and speak at any meeting, but in the organized way we're doing this, we're going to find certain themes. And in finding some certain themes and following the process in the disciplined way we do it, it's going to help us recruit the highly qualified candidates and have them separate themselves, because a very good candidate for one school board, one school system, won't necessarily be the best candidate for your school system. When you talk about how we're going to work within the timeline and the budget and the expectations, I think you'll find that our budget is pretty competitive. The way we work on that, I'll be happy to answer questions later. Because of the size of the system, we would have a different rate than perhaps if we were going to do Alexandria or even a Chesterfield or a place like that. There's a 4-step process. The first step, the most important step in getting everything settled, is called specification. I'll go into that in detail. It's the community engagement part of the process. And once you've established and we have a relationship with the board and the board gives us direction, we'll begin the recruitment, we'll do the assessment, and we'll end up doing the selection. So the specification stage, we want to engage employees in the community. One of the things you're going to notice in the proposal that I've given you artifacts from other school systems that actually show examples of what a community engagement day might be. It's a pretty intensive day. It's usually 10, 12 hours. We might end up meeting 100 people or so during the day, and it depends on the interest in the community. Your community is going to have a lot of interest. Interesting, and when we did Chesterfield on the survey, we had over 2,500 responses. We've never had anything like that. But again, it's a type of community like yours that's going to have their people engaged. We're going to work with you in creating a leadership profile that you're going to have to bless and modify to make sure that we're talking about the qualities and characteristics that you want us to use to vet the candidate. That will be approved. That'll be part of posting the vacancy. The timeline that we're going to be talking about in recruiting candidates is going to be very advantageous. Anytime you're doing something in the January, February, March, your pool is strongest. We've noticed when we've done searches even recently, when you're doing things in June and July, a lot of people are already making commitments, and it's harder to get into the ideal cycle. When you're talking about our engagement strategies, we would interview all the board members individually or in groups of 2. All this is done anonymously. It's not where we're taking notes down and say this board member says this. Everything we have to keep is in confidential. We can talk about all your various groups. We want to get into the business community. We want to get into sometimes your faith-based group, any retired teachers, any groups that you deem that are important, that in your normal process that you're going to be working with. We're going to very heavily rely on HR to give us a lot of the feel, because they're working with this at all the times. The forums that we should have will always be open. So in any case, while we're going to interview with individual groups, when you run the open forum, when you have the online survey, everybody has the advantage of participating. The whole idea is to specify skill sets that we'll use in recruiting. The recruitment part, in finding good candidates, a lot of it has to do also with our reputation, the fact that people find us. They follow our website. They keep attracting, at least knowing what is going to be out there. They also need to know that we don't have a stable of people. We start fresh with each individual group. It is helpful, though, to know some people that know some people. We do recommend that you go national. We have certain places that, and for some of you that haven't done it before, Ed Week, AASA, you have the advantage of VSBA. You have the advantage of the Superintendent Association. You also living in this area, you have a lot of people who use the Washington Post. So we recommend using that. We also have the type of network that when we do things word of mouth, we talk about going to national conventions. So a lot of it has to do with personal contacts. When you're talking about your advertising plan, all of this we will vet through the school board. We don't want anything out there that you haven't approved. Again, we'll show you some examples. You can see that we're just trying to get it right, and we're trying to capture the spirit of what you're trying to do in doing this. You have a great school system. You have a great track record. Your salary is competitive. The location is great. There's an opportunity that it's a type of system that it's a hard one to learn on the job, but sometimes superintendent experience can be important, but you also have area superintendents from Fairfax and a lot of other pretty substantial systems that have a lot of experience that could compete in maybe being the short list that we would have. Again, salary recommendations, whatever you do, all that's public record. We normally would start out with a statement commensurate with ability and regionally competitive. You don't need to put a number. People know that. So we like to suggest you use flexible language on that. In the end, you're going to be making that decision in your negotiations. When it comes to online applications, our website, everything has to be online. Everything has to be sent in to us when we're talking about reference checks, we're talking about transcripts. It's pretty intensive of what we do. When we identify groups for further consideration, Wayne and I, or even other people in our network, will all be talking more than a few times. I will guarantee you we will not bring a candidate to you that we have not met either personally or through Skype. We also, when we get involved in doing the assessments, we have someone that's an expert on, if you're going to Google something, you can't just do it superficially. You've got to go deep. You don't want surprises. We don't want surprises. It's a little tough right now when you have blogs and you have stuff out there. We've actually seen people that have been defamed and it's been inaccurate. One blog said this candidate plagiarized their dissertation. Well, that wasn't true. It was a disgruntled employee who had been fired. And so you have to sift through this, you know this, in a sense. But the whole idea, you never want to not have the adequate preparation. And we will go through that, and we do have a lot of experience in doing that. And again, we do the type of reference checks we do aren't necessarily on the references that people send to us. They're going to be hands-on. So we go beyond that. We use all the internet. A lot of it, again, having the experience as a superintendent, you do read between the lines. You do know things. And you know people that know people. A lot of people look great on paper. And sometimes there's reasons they left their previous job, and it's not because they did something wrong. In many cases, they left their previous job, and I don't think you'd want your community to go look up some of the things you might hear what people would say. We'll take care of that for you because you're not going to see those people. When you get into the selection and we end up providing you candidates, here's what you need to know. First off, when we will come to the board and we will give you a recommended list of candidates, we will not rank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll say the candidates that meet the profile. You'll have a notebook, and in that notebook it's going to have everything that they've submitted in their application. You also would know, you would see 100% of the people that submitted applications. We will go through briefly any of them, and if there's someone you'd want to know more about, we'll find out more about you. So we will be totally transparent in the pool that we have. We also will explain why we separated the ones that we will be recommending to you. In doing that, and we go through all this, and when you get this notebook also, there'll be recommended lists of questions that you can consider. Those questions will be geared to your profile. We're not suggesting you use them, but we're trying to support you so you're not having to reinvent things. And so you're getting ready for your initial interviews, your final interviews. One of the things that I didn't say, but this would have to be in the very beginning when you're setting the parameters of the search, there are certain important decisions you need to make. One of the first most important decisions is confidentiality. Our recommendation is that we can provide you the strongest pool if you would consider keeping the process confidential until the end. If you have excellent superintendents, the fact that if their name comes out there publicly, they're going to risk that with a good relationship they have with the school board. Virginia allows that. South Carolina, you can't do that because you have to announce the 3 candidates and they have to be out there publicly so you know 2 of them aren't going to get it. If you go to Texas, the candidate has to be announced for 30 days and anybody has a chance to make comment. If you go to Florida, you have a sunshine law. So anyone that even applies, it's public record. In Virginia, you have the ability to make the choice. There are other modified ways to involve the public. We could share that with you when you get into the point of doing finalists. The process that you might have done several years ago, maybe you have a track record of that being one that you were very happy with. But one of the things that you have the advantage of, and we would suggest, discussing this with other board members at the upfront part of why they chose to go this way or not that way. So you talk to Alexander, you talk to Winchester, you talk to Chesterfield or Hanover or any of these other systems. They've been sitting in your place. And if they give you the benefit of why they did it and why it worked, then you're not operating totally in isolation. Because the whole issue that while we're going to give you our best recommendation, talking to some of your colleagues, we think will only give you greater confidence.
Okay, just letting you know you're under 13 minutes left at this point.
Good enough, and thank you. Now, we work for your best interest. We will advise you pros and cons. We will give you support every step along the way. This is what a timeline could look like. You probably would want to get into the specification stage in which you're dealing with community engagement. You're getting to the point of doing a profile. As soon as you get into this, when you start your national advertisement. So you do the profile, you do this, it would be, in my opinion, good to have this done before the holidays. You're into January, and so your recruitment starts as soon as the board gets involved with the profile. It starts as soon as you hire the firm because it gets out there in the sense it's going to be on the site. But you're dealing with February, March. You have flexibility here. It depends on the pace of the board. The reason we like to keep February open is you have the national convention, and you can do a lot of hands-on vetting of candidates at the national convention, which is in the middle of February. So you go through and you receive this process, and then you're going to have to make the decision of when it is you want to have the candidates presented to you. At that point, when we present, then you work on an interview schedule, which you might have a first round, you might have a second round. We suggest that you don't do maybe more than 3 interviews a day. Most first interviews are about an hour and a half. You go through, again, this process, and you reach the point, and a lot of it has to do with, and again, in this situation, when you're present superintendent, what your timeline is, whether you're going to have an interim. All these things get involved in the front end of figuring out where the advantages and disadvantages are for your school system. And at that point, when you choose whoever you're going to choose to assist you, you just need to have those conversations. And again, we're here to just tell you the advantages or disadvantages of it.
In doing that, and again, that's the last slide. The whole thing here is that we're trying to assist you and to try to find the match. Again, I think we have a lot of confidence that we have been able to work well with communities and work well with school boards and develop their trust. And again, we would want the very perfect candidate that's going to walk on water. And we would like to say that we'd like to make your choice as hard as we can make it. In the bottom line, you just want that one. But I think you're going to have more than one. I think between 4 and 6 is probably where we would vet. But again, anybody else that we have looked at, we'll be happy to discuss that with you. So if you take the time at an appropriate time to look at what we have in the packet, the backgrounds that we have, the references we have, the fact that this is just an example of the hands-on work that we would have. And by the way, when we take this in here, you keep it in a room. You don't take it out. All this keeps confidential because you've got to keep it in a way that you protect the privacy that you're wanting to do.
Okay.
Do I have time for
Thank
questions?
you.
I'd be happy to answer.
We have 9 minutes. So, and also if we have any that we can send you and you can answer afterwards, we can do that as well. But anything we can get done tonight, I think would be better. So, Michael, you want to start?
Thank you, sir. I'd just like you to explain or to talk more to the public engagement process, because that's huge in this community. So if you could outline it for both our benefit and for the benefit of the community, that would be great.
A rule of thumb, and you'll see an example of, I think, a community engagement day in Hanover. We would probably have 20 or 30 meetings throughout the day. Wayne would be running a meeting every half hour. I'd be running a meeting every half hour, whatever group you wanted. We would then want to have employee forums. We would want to not just deal with the teachers. We would want central office. We would want any of your classified staff. In organizing this, we would just show you different options. I would have to say, and again, I ask you to check our references, no one is going to feel excluded. We think being inclusive is the most important thing. And I think if the board takes the approach that you are so inclusive in the input you're doing to develop your profile, and then at the part where you have to take advantage of, if you choose confidentiality, you are using it based upon not just the board's input, but input of your entire community, then you get the best of both worlds. And again, that community engagement report is public record. And that public record and all that surveys are out there in the most transparent way that you can find. And I would just say that we have never had any feedback, in at least the systems we've been working at recently, that they haven't felt that that engagement piece has that type of transparency to it.
Okay.
And I understand this is the type of community that it is valued as it should be.
You mentioned one day. Is that just one day?
No, we would do 2 full days.
Okay. Okay.
In my opinion, for this size system,
Okay.
in Chesterfield, you're dealing with 60,000 kids. We did 3 days.
Thank you.
Okay, and just so people know, Justin called in probably a minute after you had started, so our chair has been listening in as well.
Hello, Justin.
Oh, he's probably got his
Hi,
phone
sorry,
on mute.
I'm on mute.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get to you in a second. Margaret?
No, actually, Michael asked the question I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Oh, okay. I have 6 here, so I'm sure you've got some, Phil.
Just actually one.
If it's strap in.
I was struck in looking through the various proposals by what you began with, which is there's a high degree of similarity between the proposals. Differences in terms of what is exactly proposed. I'm just curious if you could talk a little bit more about what you think differentiates your firm, because we've got to make a cost benefit analysis in picking the firm that we think would be best suited to us.
Well, and also let me
It's
make
not-
clear that each organization knew who else was coming tonight, but nobody's proposals have been shared. They'll all be able to see them publicly.
I think you need to talk to the school systems we've worked in. I'm not trying to compete against another system. Our process works. I think our community engagement process is intensive, and I think the boards have always been satisfied that when we provide that report, we use the quantitative data from the interview process with the the quantitative data with the survey, with the qualitative data of the hands-on, that I think you're going to find it's a good reflection of the community. It also is a very good game plan for a new superintendent and a school board as they're looking at taking that next step of building upon the transition between your present superintendent and a new one as part of their entry plan. So I just would suggest you call some of our clients.
Okay. I just asked Justin if he had a question. Okay, Justin, go ahead.
Yeah, this is kind of I don't want to go at it too many ways, but it sort of follows up on Mr. Reidinger's question. And I guess I'll ask it this way. As we make this decision, I think we have 3 strong firms involved. What do we need to be thinking about as we make our decision? What do we need to weigh?
I think the board needs to have a relationship and a trust, or have evidence that they have the ability to have the relationship or the trust of the firm that you're going to work with. I think it all comes down that when we're making recommendations to you, the fact that you would say we know we've done the homework or have a track record of doing a homework, that you can have the confidence that as you're narrowing it down to select the most important person, the trust element has to come in there. So we're trying to guide you through that. We're trying to anticipate to help you ask some of the tougher questions. And I think that's that relationship thing of how you have to feel about that. I think one of the areas that Wayne and I bring has to do with our superintendent experience. And the fact that all BWP, the associates we have been successful superintendents. I think that's just a good lens for the vetting.
Okay, and let me follow up on that. What is it about having been a superintendent that you think is a differentiator?
Well, you can have that conversation with your own superintendent at some time. Well, I think you're dealing with how a superintendent works with a school board, and how also, even to the fact that we know what's going on. For example, I've been an interim superintendent last year in Montgomery County and the year before in Shenandoah, so I haven't been really out of the business. So I kind of know what's happening, and I will tell you, being a superintendent in 2006 was a lot easier than being a superintendent in 2016 because of all the financial challenges that you've had to deal with. And having sensitivity with that, that's really, it's just terrifically important. So again, through that, you have that lens when you're talking with colleagues head to head that, well, what's going on? What are you thinking about? And you're also going to be looking at the lens of, well, I want to know how progressive these people are. I want to know if they're just someone that, and I don't think this system is looking for a status quo. You're looking for a system that's going to be looking over the horizon with aspirations, and you want to continue putting it out there, because whatever you're preparing your kids for today is not going to be good enough for what you're going to prepare for a group of kids that are going to graduate 12 years from now. And I think that's the reputation you have, but you're going to want us to find people that have demonstrated a track record that we think is credible, and I think you have that by working with that. Does that answer your question? He's on mute.
I think you raised 2 issues. There's the issue of trust and experience. I guess I'll just ask one question. Are those 2 issues related, or is there any reason why you'd be more or less trustworthy than the other candidates?
I'm not going to go there because I don't think I can answer that. I think, again, my best answer to you on your school board, we've worked with 15 searches in the last 5 or 6 years. Every time we've worked with a school board, I think you need to talk about our clients that we've worked with and let them speak for us, because I don't, frankly, you have 3 firms here that all, I think, have been successful in superintendent searches. Now it's just for you, here, while we're trying to get the right fit for you, for your superintendent, you're trying to get the right fit that you feel comfortable with your search firm. And that has to be within you.
And I appreciate that. And I'm not being flip, but I'll be honest and say this is not an easy choice. I think there are 3 strong candidates, so I'm just trying to get some additional input on how we go about making this decision.
Well, we've just been very fortunate within the last 5 years ago to have a pretty good run with our work here in Virginia. And so I think that, well, again, I think our qualifications are pretty strong for the track record and the candidates.
Yes, well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay. What I'll do is I'll just list my questions really fast and then email them to you.
That'd be fine.
And I can't remember whether you had this in your proposal or somebody else did. I was curious as to how long an average search takes. You've got a timeline, but I'm just curious. You said, January to March is the best time, so I assume that's going to be the speediest. For the superintendents that you listed, I'm curious how long your choices stayed on average.
Well, we have had some changes, but sometimes there have been promotions where people have
Right.
left.
No, I mean, just
Well, they're all here. We haven't lost any.
okay. Well, I mean, that alone says something. At one point, you said you would recommend going national. I was just curious when you would ever recommend not going national, but that's sort of less important. I am curious as to whether the fact that Fairfax is also searching at the same time has any meaning, you think, for us. So if you could respond.
The match for fair, there's only 1% of the school systems that have over 100,000 students. So the type of people that are going to have experiences that are going to be drawn to Fairfax might be a little different
Right.
than the type of experience. And again, that doesn't mean they're better superintendents or not. It just means that
It's different.
The type of scale that you work with in that type of a system is going to be different than the type of scale here. Actually, in a smaller system like this, you have to wear a lot more hats. You can't delegate. And Stuart Robeson, who used to be your superintendent here, will tell you the big difference than when he was in Falls Church and then he went to Hanover. He says, Falls Church was every bit as challenging as when I had all this staff in Hanover because I had to do everything ourselves.
Okay.
Myself.
All right. Thank you. If we have any other questions, we will shoot them to you. But
Well, thanks for the
appreciate
opportunity.
Appreciate
We
you
appreciate
coming out.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah, he drove up from Richmond today, so I was appreciative. All right, next we've got VSBA. We have Samantha Bosserman, who I think we all get emails from practically every day at 6 in the morning.
Every day. I'm sorry, guys.
No, that's okay. We all read them religiously. All right, we're just getting your presentation ready, so give us a minute, please.
Sure.
One more Doug's. Yeah. We'll have to click for her.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay, great.
What to do?
And so what's being pulled up, it's our packet proposal. We don't have a formal presentation, and I do apologize for that. If we would have known we were going to do a formal presentation, we certainly would have sent someone up to Falls Church. So I apologize for not being there in person, but we certainly welcome the opportunity, and thank you all for the opportunity for considering VSBA to assist you all with your search.
Okay,
If
well,
you just let me know when the packet's pulled up, then I will start going through it.
okay, we're probably a minute away.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry about that.
Authenticate.
Yeah, actually, I don't think it's on the public site.
Did you put it on yet?
Oh, it's not on the public site?
Yeah, she put it on.
Oh, it is? Okay.
I did. Yeah. We had to have them on today because
Which one?
Yep, that one.
public is same thing.
Well, we don't, unless you go this way. You want it full screen or not?
Yeah.
You probably need to, because it looks like she's got it letter form.
Okay, Samantha, we have got it up. All you need to do is say when to move ahead a page.
Okay, perfect. And really, I'm not going to go page for page on this. You guys can read this at your leisure. I'll just go over the basic process that we do, what kind of our background is.
Okay, where do you want us to
offer you.
where do you want us to
You
start?
can start, if you want to start on page 5 would probably be the best place to start.
Okay, we're there.
Pages, okay, the first few pages are just a welcome letter from Gina Patterson, who's our executive director. You all know Gina very well. Second page really just gives an overview of the association, which you all are members, so thank you, and you guys participate in a lot of our services, and so that just kind of reiterates the services that the SBA provides. So I'm really going to focus on page 5 and go over our background and our experience doing searches in Virginia. So as you can see, the VSBA has been doing searches for over 40 years. I can say I was not around for those 40 years, but I will say that Gina Patterson has been around for half of those. So she's been doing searches solely for 20 years, which is great. She's got a lot of experience that is really just perfect for Virginia. She has been in Virginia her entire career. She and our previous executive director have placed 75 of the 132 Virginia superintendents. Those are all results of the superintendent searches that were done through Virginia. And we've done those on various urban, suburban, rural divisions. Anyone in the state, you'll see on one of the other actually the next page, you'll see a list of references of boards that have participated in our superintendent search services. So, and with phone numbers, and these are people that you can certainly give a phone call to, board member to board member, and have a conversation, just see how they worked with VSBA, how they appreciated the process, and things like that. So we'll definitely leave that for you all to make any kind of those reference checks as well. One thing that is kind of different about us is we're not a executive search firm, so we specialize in Virginia superintendent searches. So every search that we do is Virginia. That's who we are. We're the Virginia School Boards Association. We are your association, so we are here to serve you. You all are our members, and really this is just one arm of one of the services that we provide to you. With that, we do have a vested interest in making sure that you're choosing and selecting a proper superintendent that fits in with your division, because we have that vested interest. We're going to be there after the search. So we're going to work with that superintendent with you. We're going to provide services to them as well, and really we're just going to be a full package deal when it comes to that. And again, this is a service of the association, so you'll see a little difference in the cost and the fees because it's an additional arm that we serve within the association. So our searches, whereas we focus on Virginia, we are, all of the searches that we do are a national search. Anything you put on the internet is going to get out there nationally. We have some boards that really say, oh, they just want to do a Virginia search, and we just kind of have to let them know that that's really not possible, nor is it anything that we really recommend, because a lot of times, or sometimes your best applicant could be from out of state. Sometimes they'll be in state, sometimes they'll be out of state. One thing, VSBA is a member of NAS, the National Affiliation of Superintendent Searchers. These are superintendent searchers from all over the country, and they work with all of the other state associations. So we have a great relationship with all of those different state associations, and we're able to pick up the phone and call and say, hey, we've got an applicant from your state. What do you know about this person? Have you interviewed this person before, et cetera, et cetera? And they'll give us a lot of information. That's really helpful, and we share information likewise about Virginia candidates that are applying elsewhere as well. So we've got a very good two-way communication with that group, and we've been a member of that group for a long time. Gina's actually been the chair of NAS, so she holds a lot of clout in that organization and with that group. And I will say Gina will be doing the majority of this search, so she oversees all of the search processes, and she'll really be your main contact for that search. I will help with a lot of the administrative roles and setting things up online and doing the PR piece for it. An additional kind of person you'll have on your staff, as it will with VSBA, is Elizabeth Ewing, who's our Director of Legal and Policy Services. I'm sure you all have met her at conferences or even had a conversation with her. She will be around throughout the search service to make recommendations. If you all have any legal or policy questions, she can certainly answer those. Not to jump ahead, but one thing that's really great about Elizabeth is she will read through your contract. When you get to the contract piece, she'll read through and make sure it's a board-friendly contract, so it's got the board's best interest to come into play to present to your candidate. So that is a service as well with choosing VSBA. And I believe that covers a lot of what's on page 5. So if you want to keep scrolling, page 6 is the page that I talked about with the references. And so these are our most recent superintendent searches. You'll see we just finished the search in Pulaski County. We've done Nottoway, Southampton. We did do the Virginia High School League search as well. So that was a little different for us, but it was a great opportunity to meet some different candidates as well. And then you'll see a lot of the other searches and the school board chairman or the person who was our main contact at the time for that board. Excuse me, and we can certainly provide you with any additional information for anyone else on the board if you'd like to follow up and discuss with them. And then you'll also see the year in which we did that search. On page 7, you'll see really just an overview of the process of what the VSBA search process entails. So the first, should you choose to go with VSBA for the search, we will set up an initial meeting with the board. That is when Gina and I will come to Falls Church at a meeting, in a public meeting, and go through this process again more in detail and really specific to Falls Church and to what you all are looking for. At that meeting, we'll set up a timeline, which you'll see a sample timeline on further down in the packet. Sample timeline, we'll set up that timeline. We'll also give you a search manual that you'll have all sorts of information, articles, and then also some kind of helpful information about interview process and everything like that. You'll get those books at that time, and we'll really divulge into the details at that meeting. On task 2, the profile of the new superintendent. So the main thing we do with this is, again, this is your all search. This is the superintendent that you all will be working with. So the board really works on that profile. We will provide an online survey that you all can send out to your constituents, to your stakeholders, at everyone. You can do that online. You can also provide printed copies. A lot of times the divisions, if people are not able to access the internet, you can provide a printed copy. They can fill out the form, and we will actually input all of that data for you. We also suggest that the board holds at least 2 to 3 public hearings, depending on your community. And I know Falls Church is a very active community, so you all would know how many public hearings would work best with your board and with your community. So you would have the public hearings to really hear from your public to see what kind of qualities and qualifications they are looking for in a superintendent. You'd gather that information, and we would work with you to create the profile of this new superintendent. So this would be your position announcement, any qualifications that would be desired. We've spent a lot of time working on what is required versus preferred. You know, if you require a doctorate versus preferred doctorate, and we'll get into additional detail on that at that initial meeting to kind of give some recommendations and see, you know, what works best for you all. So after the position announcement is created, we will go through our processes to announce that and to get it out into the public. So we will put it on, obviously on the VSBA website. We'll also send it out to all of our national affiliates. So we'll send it out to the NASS group. We'll send it out to the State Association Affiliation of Superintendents, also to the National Association, and we'll post it online at jobs, things like that. And that's something, if there are specific places that you all would like it posted, we can certainly talk about that at that first meeting to make sure that we're posting it in the places that you all, that you all would like. And then we'll also use our history and post there as well. And then the next step is really just kind of watch who comes in, watch the candidates that come in. We also do an online process. We use AppliTrack, our applicant tracking through Frontline Education. It's a great system. A lot of school divisions use it even for their HR departments if they're applying for teachers or other positions within the division. So a lot of our superintendent applicants are familiar with this system, so they're able to fill out all of the information online. They can attach their resume, their CV, any kind of information that they would like, anything that you all require. If you want to require reference letters, require really anything that you're looking for. So they're able to attach any of those. The great thing is that you all will have access to applicant tracking, and so you can log in and really see in real time who is applying for your position. And again, I will echo the previous comment is that we really recommend a confidential process. So you get in, you're going to see these applications as they come in live, and it's very important to keep this process confidential so that you can get the best applicants. Because again, applicants are not going to want their name thrown out there saying that, oh, they're looking for different positions, or they might even be thinking about it because you know how, that might kind of mess up the relationship that they have, especially if they're a sitting superintendent. So we also recommend the confidential process and very much appreciate that Virginia law allows that. So when those applications are coming in through AppleTrack, the SBA will screen those applicants. So we'll do the reference checks, and we do also check the people who are not on their reference list. We'll use our NASS affiliations, talk with those members, see what they know, especially if they're from out of state, to determine their background. We'll also call local school board members to see how they work with their school board, because of course that's who we're representing. We're representing you all as a school board, and we really have your best interest is our best interest as well. When we come back to that meeting, so we will report to the school board, jumping ahead to task 5. We'll come back for another in-person meeting in Falls Church. We will have information on all of the applicants for you, not the background checks, but the reference checks. All of the information that we've collected, you will also be able to see what's in applicant tracking. We'll go through those, and we will not make a selection for you. We don't rank order either. We will say who meets your qualifications best, and then we will leave it up to you all to really select those that you would like to interview. And so at that meeting, that will be done in closed session. So we go through really the specifics that gives you all an opportunity to look at each of the applicants and just make sure that you're asking the right questions. And if you all have any concerns, we can let you know if we've heard anything with our checks as well. At that meeting, we will also help you all set some interview dates, or give you some processes to set those interview dates, and also work with you on interview questions that you will utilize with your top 5 or 6 or however many you get down to. And we'll help you. We do have some interview instruments that we can give you to help you rank order the candidates internally, to help you guys make that decision, and then also to make sure you all are asking the questions that you'd like to ask, and specifically the questions that really go with your qualifications to make sure you're finding the person that's best fit for Falls Church City Schools. And again, you all will participate in interviews. We do ask that all board members participate. You all know how important this process is of hiring a superintendent, and you will select that superintendent. We can assist you with the press release of the selection of the superintendent, assist you with all of that information. And then we also will help provide any kind of consulting services, again, with that contract. So we will present you with a board-friendly contract and give you information on how to compare your current contract with the contract that we recommend, and then Elizabeth can look at that information and give you some recommendations before you present that contract to your finalists. And then one thing that is a little, I guess it's on page 10, we also provide, so once the superintendent's selected, you all are having a great honeymoon stage, we also offer a board governance training that's free of charge for you to come to Charlottesville, set school board norms, go over roles and responsibilities, governance team practices, a lot of training pieces that you all can go and really start creating that relationship with that new superintendent to keep you guys going and keep you all moving in the right direction. And on page 11, you will see the background. You'll see Gina's background on that page, as well as Elizabeth. So you can see the years that they've been doing the search services, and then also serving with the association. And page 12, you'll see the fee structure fee structure based on your student population size, and then also kind of any expenses that come through. Another piece that's really nice, especially when you get down, you might have 2 or 3 candidates that are very close to the board, having trouble deciding. We also have access to an Achiever assessment tool, and so this is an opportunity where your candidate can fill out forms, answer questions, things like that, personality questions, trait questions, and we can provide those results to you all, so that might be able to help make your decision, especially when you're down to that path, especially between 2 candidates, and we can do it between 3 as well. So there's some additional information on page 12 about that process. And I think that really kind of goes through, I know it was a quick overview, but goes through the process that VSBA uses. And I'm certainly more than happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Okay, great. We've got 14 minutes left, so we have a little extra time. Mr. Webb, since you missed our first one, do you want to start off, or I've got ones if you don't, but I just wanted to give you the first shot. Okay. Since I got cut short, let me just do my quick 3 ones. One question was just a clarification on numbers. You said you had placed 75 of the 132 school division superintendents in Virginia. Did you mean 75 total or 75 of the current ones?
The current ones.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, we've done a lot more searches than that in the history.
Okay. One question on confidentiality. How do you make it clear at the start that the process will be completely confidential?
It really boils down to trust amongst the school board members, honestly. It's very confidential with VSBA. Gina and I are the only ones that see the applications that come in. We do the reference checks. We close our doors so no other staff can hear who we're calling. And then if the applicants, list that you can call their current employers and things like that, then we'll have that conversation with the board members. The board members, if somebody applies from another division or something like that, we'll have that conversation in confidence with that board member as well. And it's really trust based on the school board members, because you all will be looking at the applications as they come in. So it's making sure that, you're not leaving your computer open so someone can see the people that have applied and things like that. And we really stress that and it makes sure that when people know that they're applying to a search that VSBA is doing, they know our history. They know we're not going to, we don't recommend that the boards announce the top 3 candidates, have them come to a parade. We actually had a division that did that probably 30 years ago. They paraded them around the city. It was kind of a big debacle, but we recommend that the board does not do that and really maintains that confidentiality. And a lot of the applicants who have applied with us before know that, and then they trust that. And sometimes we'll have an applicant call just to make sure, because they're applying in different states. They like to know what the Virginia state laws are and to know that their confidentiality will be protected. And we have that conversation with those applicants one-on-one to make sure that they understand that it is a confidential process. The board has agreed to this, and the board is abiding by that.
Okay. Unless somebody has a hand up, I've just got one other. Okay. One question about NAS you mentioned. That was the National Association of Superintendent Searches?
Searchers, yes.
Searchers. Is that something that other firms would have access to, or is that something that you have access to because you're a state school board association?
The latter is correct. So the affiliation is made up of only firms, I guess, only really state associations who provide superintendent search services. So it's really from, I know the Texas Association of School Boards has a huge superintendent search department, and they're a very large member in NAS. And so it's the superintendent, it's really the people who do Gina's and my job across the country within their state associations. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It's sort of like you're a state association, so you can be part of NSBA, but others can't.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. All right, next. No? Okay. Wow, you did a really good job, because those are the only questions.
I I've got a question.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Justin. Forgot about you.
Following up on Mr. Lawrence's question, with respect to confidentiality and exchanging information about various candidates, do you just send those in the clear in emails? Do you set up a portal? What's the approach there?
You mean how people apply to the position?
No, how do you transmit the candidates to the school board?
Oh, so you will have access to that. So when they apply through the online system, each individual school board member will have an individual login and password to go in and access that. Yes. And then when we come to that, when we come to that second meeting, we will bring printouts. That's the first time you'll see it on paper. We'll bring a printout to review, and then we do collect those afterwards as well.
Okay, well, I'll ask you the same question I asked the prior candidate, and that is, I think we have three very qualified organizations here. What do you think we should factor into our decision making to make this difficult decision?
Sure. I think that we are your association. We exist for school boards and for school board members. And you all have a relationship with VSBA. We've done your search in the past, so if any of you were on the board during that, you know our process. You're familiar with us. We're familiar with you as well. We know you guys. You get our emails every day. But we have a relationship with you all, and we serve and we represent the school boards. So school boards is where our interest is. So we're there to represent you all, represent your best needs, and really to help you find the best candidate that's going to fit your school division and your school board. We also have that vested interest. So we're not going to leave, we're still with you after the search, whether you choose to do us or not. We're still with you and with the superintendent that you select. And so we work at the directive of the board, and we are there for you after the search to follow up with other services and answer any kind of questions that you need. And this is a service of your association. So it's another service that we provide to you. We're available for consults. Really 24/7, it feels like some days. But, we're available for consult. You can pick up the phone and call us, and you know who you're talking to, and you know our history and our background.
So could I ask, how many searches are you involved in now?
Currently, we have two that are in the final interview process, and then we have been selected to do one more search, who will be starting in January, and that is, and they haven't announced it yet. But right now, those are the searches that we are doing. So two will close probably within the next month or so, and then we'll have another one that will start in January.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, actually, one more question from me. How would you treat us a little differently, only in the sense of, hopefully we're a bit unique. We've got 7 members, none of whom has ever been on the board while we had a superintendent search. How does that affect what you would do? It's one thing to say, oh, you've got 4 who've done it and 3 who haven't, but we have never done it as a board at all.
Sure, and that's not rare, honestly. The 2 we just did was, I think we had 1 that had done the search before. So we really walk through the process a lot at that first meeting to make sure that everybody's comfortable with the process. We're also available for any board member to call us if they have questions or concerns or anything to really kind of get them through that process. And it really, so I do a lot of the training for the association, and it's so interesting to see the boards that have gone through a search. So I guess in April or May, when you guys are looking back on this, it really makes a more cohesive board. So it's really great to see those relationships really strive and get stronger, because you all will be working so much together, and we at the association realize that, and we're going to walk you through every step of the way and be available for consult, especially for the members, for all of you who've not done this before, because it really is one of the most, if not the most important decision that a school board will make. And so we're very cognizant of that, and we want to make sure you all feel comfortable within that entire process.
Okay, anyone else? All right, I would just say one thing. Gina would have either been here or done the presentation herself, but VSBA had a very large conference down in Richmond, so she was unavailable the entire day. She, I think, did want to pass on her regrets. So that's why she's not here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. If no one else, Samantha, we will let you go. We may have some follow-up questions, but I very much appreciate you taking the time tonight.
Absolutely. You guys have a great night, and let us know if you have
Thank
any
you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Well, Tony just asked if we wanted a 5-minute break. My answer to that question is always no, but okay, I'm seeing shaking heads. All right. All right, next we've got Brad Drager, who is, yep, there he is, from Hazard Young.
Good evening. Thanks for letting me go last. I only have 3 hours planned, so we'll be fine. No, I'm just kidding. You have our proposal, I think. I'm going to save you a PowerPoint because I think boards see too many PowerPoints. Let me pass those out. Do you all have the proposal? I'm sure you probably do because that was submitted for your RFP. I am Brad Drager. I actually was born in Alexandria, grew up in Falls Church, and then my parents moved away. So I didn't go to school here. My sister did. I ended up in New Jersey. I ended up being a high school band director out of the University of Miami, but I first worked in Fairfax County. And I taught for 11 years, and I became an assistant principal at a high school, became principal of the high school, Oakton High School. You'll know that one. I then did strategic planning for Fairfax County for a couple of years with technology and human resources and all that. I ended up as assistant superintendent of human resources for 7 years with the 27,000 employees. Very exciting job, actually one of my favorite jobs. Then I became chief academic officer, interim superintendent, deputy superintendent, and I reached my magic retirement age in Fairfax County and went to New Jersey for 7.5 years as superintendent in Livingston. And it was interesting for me because coming from 185,000 to 5,700 in some ways parallels Falls Church and Fairfax County comparisons, and it's what Kevin Kastner said. The job of a smaller school district is actually harder. I've been watching some of your board meetings. I am fascinated by the parallels of life. Congratulations on your elementary movement forward with the addition and the renovation. I watched the hour and 43-minute presentation on the high school from March 16th, I think it was. That's just fascinating. Just fascinating because all the same issues that I've faced as a superintendent in Livingston were in your presentation, including some of the questions from your audience members. So it is fascinating. And one of the things I like to do on a search is really get to know the district because matching is very important. You've had some great superintendents here. Falls Church has an incredible history of great superintendents. And I think you want to continue that tradition. Mr. Lawrence, you asked about, or maybe it was Justin who asked, you know, we haven't been through this before. And I think that's one of the criteria you need to use is who you're going to feel most comfortable with. My partner who's not here tonight is Ann Monday. You may know her. She was at Robinson Secondary School for many, many years. She actually met her husband at Jeb Stuart High School. He's an English teacher. They've been married for 43 years. I think we're 42 years. We always compare how long the marriages are lasting. And she became chief academic officer for Fairfax County for a number of years. She reached her magic retirement age too. And as you know, I think you probably know, she was City of Fairfax superintendent in retirement. And then I've taken her out of retirement and had her on searches with me for the last couple of years. When I retired from Livingston in 2006, I had already started with Hazard Young and Atia. And I have done about 45 searches, and one of the questions asked earlier tonight was how many of those superintendents are still in. Out of those 40 to 45 searches, I've only had one superintendent not still in a position, and most are surviving new boards and all the things that go with staying in a job more than 3 to 5 years. So knock on Formica here, we've been having a good track record with that. Ann's helped me on a lot of the Virginia searches. I've been as far north as Fairfield recently, and I've been working in the Atlanta area too, and a lot centered around here in Virginia. The only one I won't touch is Fairfax because I have some family members in there, and I certainly want to stay clear of any accusations there of who the superintendent's going to be. I think our processes are very much the same. If you go through this, well, let me tell you why I'm with Hazard Young and Atia, actually. So when I was leaving Fairfax, I decided to go through some searches for superintendent. And I worked with VSBA, I worked with VAS, Virginia Association of Secondary School Administrators. I worked with Ray and Associates, and when I say I worked with them, I went through a search that they were conducting. And I also went through a Hazard Young and a TIA search. And it was one in Virginia. And I failed on every one I just mentioned. Just did not come in first in any of those searches I just mentioned. And then there was a Hazard Young and a TIA search. From my first Hazard Young and a TIA search, one of their associates called me and said, "We've heard very good things about you. We think we have a district that matches." And I had actually seen Livingston. And so I met them at the Springfield Hilton. They were traveling with their dog. It was a husband and wife team. And I met them there. We ended up spending 2.5 hours. And I was amazed at what they knew about the district. I was astounded at what they knew about the district. They even predicted accurately, I didn't know it that night, who were going to be the next members on the board. It was a contested election. And they said, this he's kind of seen as a funny guy, but we think he's going to end up on the board. He ended up on the board. And I was so impressed by their preparation. After I had my first round of interviews with them, I called them and I said, the one woman seems to be scowling at me the entire night. They said, "Don't worry about that. It's the way she looks all the time. Don't worry about that. She actually likes you." So, it was that type of intimacy that made me feel comfortable during that. And meeting Bill Attia and working with him, I actually brought him into Livingston to help us with strategic planning and everything. I'm just so impressed with how much we want to make sure this is a very good match for the board. And so the processes are very much the same. We sit down and have a planning meeting with you, and we will work you through all the details, and we will set the dates when you, as a board, can all be there to work on the very hard events. It's kind of easy on you in the first part during the recruitment and the focus groups and all that stuff, where it gets really mashed together for your family lives and all that is first round of interviews, second round of interviews, deliberations. We asked you to call some of the references. That's a lot of time from your families, because we want you to spend, when you make your final decision, we want you to have spent a good 6, 7, 8 hours with each of your finalist candidates. A 1-hour interview, what we tell you about our candidates, it's more important that you spend the time and feel comfortable with them. And we want you to have a very hard decision at the end. We want to bring you the type of quality of candidates that you have a hard time deciding, and it's best match and fit. Now, why do I want to know about what you're facing with the high school and your ESOL population and your projected enrollments? And I love your demographers because, as they always say, those babies aren't born yet, so we can't answer what that's going to be. And knowing all those details, then I start to talk to the people who apply, because you have to understand, when superintendents put their hats in rings like Falls Church's, they're tiptoeing at first. They are going to ask the question, is it going to be a confidential search? And they said, and the next question is, what can you tell me about the district? And I start to go down to things I already know, and I will know a lot more if you were to hire us after we have the focus group meetings. And those focus group meetings are just as the two groups have portrayed before. Ann and I would spend 2-3 days here, probably, as Kevin Kastner said, 30 to 50 meetings. And we would do the exact same thing. We ask 3 basic questions. What's working really well in Falls Church right now, and what do you want to build on and not in any way take down? What are the challenges for the future? In other words, I want to hear from your constituents. What are the challenges they see Falls Church facing? And then finally, what are the characteristics you're looking for in a superintendent? In your packet, the second thing here is we just redid our survey, and you'll see that we also have this online survey. And we've had, when I did Stafford and I did Fairfield, a district of about 20,000 citizens, we had almost 6,000 responses, so we were amazed. So although our focus group meetings won't have thousands of people, they might have 10s, they might have 5s, they might have, sometimes we get 50 to 100. What we find is the online survey is really bringing a lot of people out to give you opinion. And quite frankly, in every district I've been, the 40 districts I've been, every board member has thanked me saying, this is the most we've ever heard from our constituents. We've never, because you have board watchers. I've noticed a few in your audiences. You have, some people who will perennially be there and make sure that you're doing your jobs right. But there's a whole lot of people who watch you on TV or don't participate at all. But because this is such an important decision, they frequently will participate in this, and they are very honest. We also ask on the online survey open-ended questions, and when I'm giving you an example in Fairfield, we had 80 pages of comments, 80 pages, single space, and it'll say teacher. and I won't say their name, but we distribute that to the board, and you get to read them all. And it's eye-opening, because you may have been hearing this, and then suddenly you see 50 teachers say something that's contrary to what you've been hearing, and it's an interesting introspection of your own district. So we do that. We come back to you at a board meeting very publicly. We record all the comments that we hear in our focus groups. People will see them. We file the report. It also becomes a recruiting tool for us, because the candidates, the first question I always ask the candidate is, have you read through the leadership profile report? Dr. Jones, did I ask you that when I interviewed you? Yeah, okay. And I always am amused by the people who say, no, I've been too busy, I haven't had a chance to look at it. Then why are we talking tonight? You know, I'm always curious. You applied for this job, but you haven't had a chance to look through the profile report on the district you're applying for. And so it's one of those things, if I ask the question, I may know the answer already. And Ann and I would be screening the candidates, and we would bring you, we're actually going to a nice portal, so every board member won't have to have paper. You'll just go online with a unique login, and you'll be able to see everything that's happening. You'll see the portal with the candidates on it. You'll see the leadership profile. You'll see everything we're doing online, and it'll be nice for you so that you can work on your computers while we're doing the search and not have to lug around notebooks. So we will bring you the slate of candidates. I and Ann will make sure that we feel, if, let's say I bring you 5 and I say, here's the top group of 5, there's another group of 7, and then there's the rest. And one of the questions you need to ask me is, well, why are these in the second group? And I will go through why they're in the second group. And usually it's match and fit. It's like, well, they've been assistant superintendent, but they've never been a school principal. And one of the things I heard your community say is they really would like somebody with principal experience. I'm not using that for Falls Church, but I'm just saying those are the types of things. I'll say that's why they're in my second tier. They don't have the experience that your community was looking for. In Fairfield, just recently, they were looking for a strong finance person. And I probably should stop using Fairfield because of what's in the room here. But they were looking for very strong finances because they're going through some tough times. And guess what? Like so many districts, there's a strong anti-tax group. You know, we want no more taxes. You will not raise our taxes anymore. We've had enough. And frequently it's citizens without students in the schools. So you have to, you know, part of our democracy is everybody gets to have a say and everybody gets to have a vote. So that's a very important part of a superintendent's ability to manage all the constituents of the community, even those without children. So we'll bring you that slate of candidates. You may reach down into the third pool where I say all the rest and say, why not them? Well, I might say, well, they really look strong on paper, but they had a DUI about 2 weeks ago, because we will know that stuff. And DUIs usually are not conducive to good, you know, superintendent hires in the future, or there's been a personal bankruptcy or something like that. Beyond that, I think I should just open this up to your questions. I mean, I think Justin's going to ask me this question, how should you make this decision? You've got to make this decision on cost because your constituents will be looking for that. You got to do it on value added. The great news is, and I think this is probably true for Kevin and Wayne too, I'm retired and my wife doesn't like me in the house that much. And so she's very happy that I'm here tonight, and she hopes I do well, because I do wed myself to the district. I am available 24/7. My cell phone is always on, always waiting for your call, and I pride myself on the match. I want everybody to say at the end, you did a great job. I always ask when we present a slate, is everybody satisfied? Do we need to go out and search some more? I ask that at every point in the interviews. After the first round of interviews, I say, do you feel comfortable? Can we move on? And the compliments have been very strong. In fact, usually the compliment is any of the 3 or 4 or 5 of these people could be our superintendent. We have some tough decisions ahead. So that's the kind of search I want to bring you and conduct for you. How many minutes have I used, Mr. Lawrence?
You have almost 17 left, so you're doing well.
All right, I'm going to just turn it over to you.
Okay. Questions? Justin, you want to start? He always has a question.
Sorry, I'm fumbling to come off mute. Well, you took my question away from me. So I guess I guess one question is geography a factor, not being based in Virginia. You've obviously done your homework, but I guess from an information and experience, I guess one question this leads to is how many Virginia searches have you done in the last, say, 5 years?
About 25 in Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia. And for your information, I live in Leesburg, so I have a nice short commute home tonight. And Ann lives in Fairfax City, so we have a central office in Chicago. That's where we get our backup support from the online surveys and analytics and reports and stuff like that. But in terms of being local, we are very local. In fact,
Okay.
nobody
Well, that's
could be cheaper for you in terms of travel expenses than the two of us, okay?
and I guess well, yeah, so that's good. You mentioned that. I should have picked that up.
No, I didn't tell you where I lived. It's okay. That was left out.
But I think of you guys as an Illinois shop, so I just have to get over that. I guess since you have done your homework, I'll ask this question: is there anything in your experience that makes our district different that will have an impact on the search?
Yes, you do. And you have a standard of excellence that few districts can achieve. And I think actually the number of superintendents who can maintain that excellence is even smaller in number. A lot of people can be a good superintendent. You don't need a good superintendent. You need one who can deal with the complexity of being a small enclave in this larger conglomeration of the Washington, D.C. area and Virginia, and maintain the incredible level of excellence that you have in this school district. You are at the pinnacle of achievement, and when I look at your results with students with disabilities, and I know not everybody's happy, but let me tell you, they're a lot happier here than they are in many places. And, whether it be Stu Robinson or, all your past superintendents or Dr. Jones, I mean, you've had some outstanding superintendents. You've had some outstanding board members. I remember your principal of George Mason High School very well. I know Tyrone very well. He's an outstanding leader. Too bad you lost him. And you have a new principal at the elementary school. Your main thing is maintaining a high level of talent. And it starts with your superintendent. If you don't have that top level of talent at the superintendent position, they're not going to attract other top talent or promote from within top talent that you need to keep the excellence in the school district. So you do have a very, very unique challenge here.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay. Let me see if I can get you to answer the question so far everybody else is ducked. What differentiates you from the other two?
They're very good. I mean, school board associations usually have a very good cost profile, and as they said, they are a nonprofit organization dedicated to serving you, and they will be here for the long term. Kevin Kastner and Wayne Harris, I've known them both for years. In fact, dirty little secret is Wayne Harris was my boss at Oakton High School. So, what comes around goes around in terms of I know him very well, and you couldn't have a more upstanding person. I guess I do have the 7 years of human resource experience. I have to tell you, being a superintendent was not as much fun as being human resources. And human resources is not a lot of fun. You have when you have 27,000 employees, somebody's doing something wrong every day. And to have those discussions with people, it's my strength. As you can tell, I have no filter. I have complete honest and candor, and it served me well. They always say, go get Brad to do it. So I think in terms of, I'm going to tell the board when I think you might be going a little off center and could lead you down a very dangerous path, and I'm going to try and bring you back. But as I think it was Kevin Kastner said, it still is your decision on the search. So you can bring me back, but I'm going to give you my best advice. And, I've had, my spouse said in one of my recent searches, you haven't talked that loud to a school board member since one of your own school board members. I said, well, they were shouting at me. I said, we were disagreeing about some of the tactics they had used to get a reference, which I felt were very underhanded. So I was very, very concerned that they were undoing a very successful search. So I think it's my candor, my devotion, and I take huge pride when a superintendent works out really well. In fact, it was funny. Kevin came back and said hi. He was the interim superintendent while I was doing the search in Montgomery, and he said, "That guy's really working out well." And I said, "Yes, I know he is. He's working out really well." So it is a moment of pride, and I do follow them. Actually, I'm so disappointed in one person that didn't stay in the job that we have a 2-year guarantee. And maybe that's another differentiation. If your board doesn't turn over in the 2 years substantially, and your superintendent doesn't work out, I will be back. It will be for free. You only have to pay my travel expenses, which again, McDonald's milkshake or something like that. With the one search that I did, I had to go back and redo the search for them, and I did it for free. And I felt very bad, and I tried probably even harder on the second search. And it was out, I can tell you where it was in Accomack, and that's a very challenging environment too, because it's so rural, and it was a person from an urban district, and it just didn't work out. It just didn't work out.
Okay. What about, do you have a lot of experience working with boards like us where nobody has any experience with searches?
I have to say that when I first started this, I would say that was not true. In the last 2 years, I think I've only worked with boards that have either one person or no people that have had a prior search. So it's not unusual anymore. There has been a lot of board turnover everywhere I've gone. And look, sometimes that leads to new superintendents. So, that's not unusual.
Okay. Anyone else? We've got
Please use my time.
7 or 8 minutes. I mean, no? Okay. Well,
Okay, well, I'll get our money's worth here. So you've been around the block a bit. How would you say the superintendent search process has evolved over the last 5 years?
That's a good question.
Or maybe it hasn't. You can say that too.
Well, I'm thinking from my own experience. I'm thinking from the searches I've conducted. There is more community involvement in searches than ever before. In fact, somebody asked it here, I think it was you, asked the question, how are we going to involve the community? Because that is very important in Falls Church. And I'm sorry, Michael, I should have said your name. I had a brain freeze. And I think that is true. And that's why these focus groups are very important. And that's why it's important. When I come to you that night, I will use a PowerPoint, and I'm going to pull out the salient points, but in the written report, we will record everybody's comment. Now, some of the comments are so similar. We'll say, said 3 times, said 5 times, said 7 times. But I think it's important that your community see that I present to you the information we heard from your community. And I think that's what's different. When I used to first start this, it was like the board well, this is our decision. Yeah, I guess we'll involve the community, but really this is our decision. We're not going to get involved with them. Now, on the other end, it is hurting people a little bit because I have boards, and I'll go with their flow. They spend 6, 7, 8 hours with a first round of interviews, a second round of interviews, and then they want to put them in front of the public for 30 minutes and see which one the public likes. And it's like, but you know the people better than those 30 minutes in front of the public. Now, I agree. If the person goes out there and bombs and that was their top candidate, that's probably an issue. But what I don't like is if the 30-minute flash in front of the community could overturn what they know is a solid superintendent. Do you see what I'm saying? So people who have gotten into, and somebody used the example of a parade, that would be the ultimate thing, but you could do applause meters or something like that. But I think that's how it's changed, is where does the community get involved, and does the community at the end of the process feel that they were heard and involved? And I'll clear you, if we make a really good selection, and I've had these comments even come up in the blogs in local districts where I've worked, they say, you know what, it seems like they matched the criteria we were looking for very well. And that's what you want the community to say, and that's very important. What you don't want the community to say is, where did this person come from? They don't fit any of the criteria we were talking about. So that's a very important part of this. So that's a long answer to your question. It's subtle, but definitely communities now recognize the importance of the superintendent selection, and they don't always trust their boards to do it alone.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anyone else? If not, we'll close it now. And thank you for coming up.
Okay, thank you.
We may have some follow-up.
Can I ask a question?
You have 6 minutes left.
When do you think you'll be making a decision?
That is a fine question. We don't have an answer right now, but we are moving on both the interim search
Yeah, I saw that.
and moving on a search firm for the permanent at the same time, and honestly, as quickly as we can.
And I'm assuming because of the Virginia 6-month requirement, you're working within those guidelines too. You understand that and all, right?
Maybe you should explain that.
Well, the Virginia code requires you to name a superintendent within 6 months of a departure, from the departure date of the superintendent. So the departure date is a very important date, and then you have 6 months to fill. We've gotten some allowances, sometimes into a 7th and an 8th month, and sometimes if the person is named but not starting yet, that's okay if they're under contract. So I just wanted you to be aware that. I saw that you also had that huge decision of an interim superintendent too, so I know that's 3 days away for you. So you have a lot of work, and I sympathize with you, and if you choose me, I'll try to help you with it, okay?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Now we'll move into the closed session. Could I get somebody to read us into closed, please?
Trying to find it.
Anybody at all?
I'll do it. Pursuant to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, I move that the board convene a closed meeting for the following purpose: to discuss or consider the identified subject matter. Personnel under Section 2.2-377A1, in particular, staff appointments, staff reassignments, staff resignations, staff retirements, staff performance, EPD assignments, advisory committee appointments and resignations, and superintendent search firm candidates and interim superintendent candidates.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, thank you. Would you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Mr. Ankuma?
Aye.
Mr. Castillo?
Aye.
Okay. Ms. Gill?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Mr. Reidinger?
Yes.
Ms. Ward?
Yes.
Mr. Webb?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And because we have people on phone, we will do the closed session in here. But when we come back, we have really nothing, so please go home and have dinner.
Mr. Chair, whereas the Falls Church Public School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3711, Section B of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law, now therefore be it resolved that the Falls Church Public School Board hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirement by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which the certification applies, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Ankuma?
Aye.
Mr. Castillo?
Aye.
Ms. Gill?
Aye.
Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Mr. Reidinger?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Ward? And Mr. Webb?
Yes.
Great.
All right, thank you. So I would ask unanimous consent that the consent agenda be agreed to. Seeing no objections, so ordered. And Dr. Jones, materials for board review.
We do have a couple of things on here tonight. The first one that I'll point out is the kind of a budget update, and just letting you know where we are. We did actually have a meeting with Peak today because they will be presenting to the school board November 15th. And so they kind of want an early start as well. We had all of our meetings with all of the directors, all of the principals, and they really did a fantastic job. I think all three of us would say that, of really looking at the planning factors, looking at what's mandated, and really what they believe they need to run their schools. And it's not a wish list by any means. But what you see on here is it's that first list of what each building is saying for next year to deal with the student growth that they would request, and the departments as well. And then Hunter has just given you kind of just the real quick overview of what this number means right now. And it would take a 9.9% increase in the city transfer in order to fund, and most of it's staff. And the only thing that's in there that's actually not staff driven for the most part is VRS. We know right now that that $482,400 is a real number. They could come back in the General Assembly and actually cut that number down a little bit, but they have set that rate. So they've got to loosen up on that and take action. And that probably won't happen until, later in the spring. But we do know Loudoun, Prince William, Fairfax, these really big districts are going to help us on that front and push really hard to see if they can get that reduced, the percentage. Did you have anything to add,
No,
Darius?
no.
On health insurance increase, we've put in here at 10%. That's pretty typical, and that's could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less, but just looking at that number. And then just your general step raises. You'll notice there is, like on the support and admin, there's like a 4% to be able to try to fix some of those scales that we said we were going to do this year. So other than that, everything else is it's pretty much staff driven. You have Encore teachers, trying to increase counselors, math teachers, science teacher, activities coordinators. It's staff. So overall, it just kind of gives you an idea where the process is starting, and that, there will be a lot of work that needs to take place. So again, that would be a $3.9 million transfer after the new revenue comes in. So because we'll have an additional state money for enrollment, so that'll go up a little bit. Some sales tax, some carry forward. So Hunter's given you the quick glimpse at where you're starting from. And I know Justin's on the phone, but one thing we've talked a lot about was trying to start earlier. We talked about it last year, and we didn't start as early as we wanted, but really trying to frame it more from, okay, this is what our staff have said we really need. That's one reason we talked to Peak about, here's what your principals, have put forward, you guys, because they're talking a lot at the building level as well. And trying to be able to talk about it more from, okay, this is what it looks like, and then is the city or general government, really going to say, okay, well, it's 2% is what we're looking at, so that you can start talking about a gap, and how do you close the gap, or you don't close the gap, instead of having this surprise attack in March and April where all of a sudden everyone's just trying to cut. So it's really more the way Arlington does it, and I think it's why Arlington's is not as contentious, because they start very early and say, this is what we need really for our school system, and if it really is 2% as of today, which is the latest number we've heard, here's what the gap is. And it's much more positive to be talking about the gap, and is there a way to close it or not close it, and starting from that standpoint, instead of just going and throwing 9.9% out in January, and general government's real quiet really about the percentage. So anyway, I think it's good information for the school board to have. And I think it's going to be real helpful for an interim coming in to have already done all of this. And it's real hard to come in December or January and put a budget together. And having all of this kind of weigh in from our department leaders and our principals, I think is going to be real helpful. The Weldon Cooper is not on here. We should have taken that off today, Marty, and I apologize for that. I did get a message from him tonight. The Weldon Cooper numbers are ready. We'll have them tomorrow. So we'll get them on board docs for next week, but we just forgot to pull the item off. Then the last thing is just a memo from Sevi, again, as we continue to work on all the budget issues. He's working on a couple of facilities things for us. This one is just a memo to the board where he's been able to renegotiate our gas and get a lower rate that's locked in for 2 years. So he's been able to recoup right around $11,000 in savings over the next 2 years, which again helps fill a little bit of that gap where we cut this year. So we just wanted the board to be aware that that he had done that, and that's ongoing. The other thing I would add is on the public comment tonight, because we had said we were trying to respond, and there were several that the bus issue, and I actually talked to a group of parents about this yesterday, different people. I'm not getting very, very many comments about it, but the students mentioned it even in a LASO article. We are running our buses at capacity. They're not unsafe, but we are used to, our kids were having some buses that were going out with 20 and 25 students in the afternoons, and it has been really consolidated now running middle school, high school together, and they're not unsafe, but it feels different when you're on a bus with 50 or 60 kids than it does when you have 20 and 25 kids. So they're really maximizing the bus routes, but it's safe. On the para issue, that's one, and I have actually only had probably, that may be the only parent that's actually emailed me about it, and I did respond, but we feel like our classrooms are absolutely safe. We have 24 kindergartners. We're talking about 8 or 10 days out of the 182, where if a teacher just has a doctor's appointment or para doctor's appointment or something like that, we're not getting the sub, but it's not just at Mount Daniel, and I think that's what's important. It's across the district. If it's a media, para, if any position that is not a content teacher, because obviously when you cut sub reduction, that's where we're cutting first, are those extra positions. And so we do watch that, but we absolutely feel very comfortable that we're not putting children at risk. Most school districts don't have assistants in kindergarten and have more than 24 children. We believe that it's a valuable asset for us to have assistants, but we also feel like we have great teachers, and to not have that assistant there for a couple of days a year is okay. So the Mount Daniel issue, Mrs. Kuchma referenced tonight, I did email her the answer to both of those questions about the generator, and I actually had sent that response to the board back in August. I will put that on board docs again for next week. But the generator was bought. It is the generator. It's not a temporary generator. It is the generator that will power that new section of the building. They did all of the electrical room, which is based actually right across from where the office is now. There's a brand new electrical room that was put in there. That was the first step of that project. And then when it got halted with the 2232, they couldn't connect it because you can't turn the old power off and turn the new power on. So it's sitting there waiting, but it will be the generator for that building. As far as getting the building back together, that has to do with the fact that the building was going to be demoed. When you walk in the door, everything to the right. And this construction company did not do a great job of not bringing in muddy feet and kind of not respecting the building because they thought they were going to be demoing it in a matter of weeks. So when they realized we were halted with a 2232, they had to kind of very quickly get the building back ready for children, which meant they actually retiled the gym area because they had used that as a staging area when they ripped all the ceilings out. So you can imagine how dirty the floor was, and from the old HVAC. They had to actually recarpet the halls because the workers had just been going all over when they were doing the HVAC work. That is, it shows up on the actual schedule because it must. It's an expense, but it comes out of Grunley's GMP, the guaranteed maximum price. So, but for cost analysis, it has to be there. And again, we had explained that. And then on the redesign, I sent the school board a note on redesign costs just last week. City Council was discussing that issue last night because they're looking at how best to utilize those bond funds and how they're utilizing the leftover money or what we requested for Thackeray, then also the HVAC project. And it is $100,000. Total, it's 140, and that is your project management at 40 and redesign at 100. And that's what it's costing to do redesign to take off those 6 classrooms. And that's a pretty confident number with that. You don't know until they totally get it done, but they have to put the estimate forward, and that's where it's sitting. But we will get that on board docs as well. But I think those are all the public comments that we had tonight. I don't think there was anything else that I missed.
Could I just ask one question about the budget update?
Yes.
There are various colors. There's fixed is orange.
Yep.
And then the SW, what's SW stand for?
System-wide.
Okay, I guess my ask on this, I think this is a great start.
Yeah.
But I guess my first ask would be for a categorization of which of these items are mandates. We don't have a choice, because I think that's an important
Good point.
piece.
Yeah, and we can do that. One thing we asked the principals and directors to do this year, when they presented this, they actually shared each item that they brought forward, if it was mandate, planning factor, or a need. So we have that information for you.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and the other thing I know, I watched the meeting that I missed, and we did have one more public comment that talked about special education needing more assistance. And I do want to point out that on this budget, you'll see we are asking for a special education assistant director. And I totally agree with that comment. That job has become enormous for a number of reasons, and not only that, that job also is our Title IX coordinator, and we'll have a lot of work to do in Title IX, as well as overseeing preschool, which has gone from having 40-odd children to now 74. So you will see that position on here, and that's one that we would agree with. That was that comment was from last week.
But I'm seeing, for example, approximately $400,000 in special education line items. Are those all mandated?
We would have to go and roll those up, Hunter. We haven't really
Okay,
looked
that's
at.
fine.
Yeah,
That's
sorry.
fine.
I know we have at least 2 or 3 that are mandates on there. The others may be planning factors driven, which really for us is really a mandate, because we try to stick with our planning factors because we feel like that's the reasonable target for us with the children that we have.
Yeah, and off the top of my head, just thinking of which items were flagged as mandates, it's close to $900,000 ballpark of the 4.9 million.
Okay.
So I've got 3 issues in no particular order. This para issue with the kids keeps coming up. I'm not sure if it's the same parent or same group of parents, but it keeps coming up. And my question is, does that open us up to any liability? I'll park that for 1 second. The second question is the buses and the number of kids on there. 50, 60 kids in a bus. Again, is that a safe limit? Is it that we're taking more buses on there? Again, are we opening ourselves to liability? Should anything happen in the event a parent, on the first issue, a teacher's left with 24, 25 kids, something happens, he's turned his back, I don't know what happens if anything happens. Then there's the bus issue if something happens. And then finally, when are we going to have a discussion about policy? Because at 2%, the classroom sizes are going up, and I don't care how we spin it, dice it, slice it, or whatever. I think we should start looking at it. Already it seems we may be off policy on one. I think we're off policy on something. Are we? Is that? Are we?
We're 2 over in kindergarten. We're right at policy in second grade, and
so
close
when
and high school, several sections.
it's something we need to
over.
address because it's coming. I mean, we can't have policy but be having. I don't know how it works, but if we're over, should we adjust the policy or should we wait for the next budget? I guess what I'm saying is it's coming, and so are we going to address it? Because at 2%.
The school board policy is guidance, but it's, if it's going to be at 2%, then you're going to have to at some point say, we're going to lift.
Yeah, I guess
school
my point
class
is
size.
I would rather not sit here and declare a gap. I'd rather find a way to close the gap. You know what I mean?
Right.
So if it's and these are hard choices. So if we can't afford it, declaring the gap is one thing. But if I can't handle what happened last year, not again. I mean, I won't sit here and cut chalk for classrooms and stuff like that. I'd rather miss the meeting.
There's no chalk.
I'm telling you.
Copiers.
Because this is insane. I mean, we've got to find a way to do it. So let's be real. Let's just say, can't do this. These are the options, and let's just put the hard choices on the table because this is.
Well, and I think to put it in perspective, because Hunter and I have been running a lot of numbers, is that 2% with the existing budget that we have, and I feel like we did cut a lot out last year, you're really looking at funding VRS health insurance, and that's about it. You might get 1 teacher as of today. I mean, that's how difficult the 2% is. It's no staff raises, but it's also just not adding staff at any of those pressure points.
But that's my point exactly.
Right.
And so then we let the citizens know we've cut anymore. It's the bone. And so do we then attack the fund balance? I don't know how we do it. But seeing as we have no way of generating any extra money, but we're still being asked to, unless the fence around the city, but the more the kids come in, if we just use a simple multiplication, each kid costs 14 or 15 million to educate.
1,000.
Oh, sorry, 1,000. Thank you. 1,000 to educate. We have X number of kids. Let's do the math. But if we're not going to get the funding to do that, then let's put the consequences on the table, or let's demonstrate what that means, and let's get the word out, because this is, I mean, I don't see it. I mean, to sit here and say we have a $4 million gap, knowing we ain't getting $4 million from across the street, what are we doing? So then we cut or we stuff more kids in the classrooms.
I mean, I think we've talked
my
about
2
this
cents.
before. I thought what we had talked about before was preparing a budget that was guidance and, showing what class sizes would be. So based on Weldon Cooper, here's the budget. It's 2%, and we're going to have. And then if that's what the general government gives us, then we don't have any further work to do. That's because we've decided what we're
Right.
going to do, and that means
Go home
class
in February.
sizes of 26 or 27
Yeah.
or whatever it happens to be. And if we get more, here's the delta above our gold request or our silver request or our 10 request, whatever it is, would be X amount, and here's how we'd spend the additional money if we got it. And I think that's the only way to avoid after the fact reanalysis of were we truthful or not. We just got to say here's what it's going to be.
Yeah, and start earlier like
Yeah.
we're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to go back to your issue, on the para issue, there's no liability. We are absolutely safe with that. So I just share that. And then the buses, the number of kids on the buses are absolutely fine. I will say, though, anytime somebody says they're getting too full, I always reach out and don't just assume that. I did ask Nancy this afternoon or this evening to actually, can we do a count again on Thursday? Because we periodically do that. And all the bus drivers actually tell us, because it's at the end of the day with MEH and GM, how many kids are actually on the buses. Now, high school can be a challenge because it changes daily, but we periodically do that just so we are keeping count. And usually when we see it is when we're in between sports seasons or something. But right now, the buses are all running okay, but they're full.
So Dr. Jones, let me ask about the paras and the kids. Are we sending out a message that we should all be, because we're out in the street and folks are asking questions, what should we be saying? You get what you get and you don't make a fuss? Or
Well,
do we?
I think it goes back to the budget discussion you just
ahead and
talked
say it.
about. I mean, it is the reality of the budget that we're dealing with. And I also want to say, if a pair is having knee surgery and they're going to be out for a week, we're getting a sub for a week. So this is not if a pair in kindergarten is out for 3
Extended.
days for a wedding or something like that where we know it's consecutive, and then yes, we're getting a sub. It's really only just the one of somebody's gone for half a day to the dentist or there's something like that. And that's, again, across the district. So we definitely feel like it's very manageable, it's very doable, and quite frankly, if you're anywhere else but here, it's normal.
So let me understand
Most
that.
places don't
And
have
When do we
paras
get
like
a
that.
sub and when do we not get a sub?
Can I just mention something real quick?
I'm just trying to understand
I
it
don't know if
so I
Tony
can message
mentioned.
it.
You get, if it's a special education paras.
You get a
Oh,
sub.
yeah, you
get
get a sub.
Okay.
Yes.
Special education. you
We're
get a
All
sub.
simply
special
mandated to
education,
have them.
yes.
We have to get a sub for them. So it's just the little kid ones, the ones at like Mount Daniel where they just have an aide in the class, they each have the two teachers. and
Or
that.
a library assistant at any of the schools would not get a
In school
para.
suspension or.
And the more important question, because the parents hear that, but what should we be saying to them? That there is no funding for it, period.
Yes,
That's it.
as a result of the budget process last spring and the need for the board to reduce its budget request, that was one of the areas. Substitute hiring was one of the areas we reduced in order to balance the budget.
Yeah, I mean, there's no funding for it
That's the
because
type
we
of-
cut the funding for it.
Yeah, we didn't have money.
And we're also looking at when we receive time card requests for people to do
Oh, yeah.
additional work or something like that. There are times when we are saying, you're asking for 20 hours, we'll give you 5. Because we know that we have to watch those funds. Or we're saying we're not able to do that at this time.
Okay.
And I would say to people, if you don't like it, I mean, it's early enough now in the game, you can start speaking out. Come
Yeah,
to
so
school
that
board
we get
meetings, go to city
funded
council
fully
meetings.
next time.
Establish what your priorities are. I mean, as opposed to now, after the budget's done and end of story. Like,
And
you
I
can't
will
really
say
do
in
it.
tough budgets, I mean, there are school districts where they don't get subs for teachers. And they'll actually take, a 4th grade class and split them up 5, 5, 5, 5 into other classrooms. And that's, we would, and we would not do that because instructionally, that has huge impacts for what children get all day. So, and we're not at a position where we're doing that. This is really those odd days during the year, and it's not a tremendous amount for any one classroom or any one area, and it's really spreading it around K-12. But, and, you know, we have lots of pressure points, and I think that's why you see the budget at, you know, the 4 million requests. I've said today in Peak, actually, I think the area that's probably the most challenging right now is custodial staff. I feel like they have adding another 150 kids that actually make mess and drop papers and, you know, more toilet paper, it's everything. It just makes a difference, but they've really been stretched thin, so.
All right, one quick question. On the bus issue, it's not just how many kids are there, but if they're allowed to, you know, stand in the aisle, sit in the aisle, I mean,
They're not.
that's an issue separate from is the bus full?
Right. And as soon as we get cameras on there, it'll help control that even more so.
Oh, my
Because
son mentioned there's a camera on his new bus today.
yeah, I don't know, and Hunter, you may know the installation timeline, but they might just be
Yeah,
coming
there's a
in.
new bus.
But it does stop
Nancy
some
was-
of that.
I was working on it this morning. That was one of the
I mean, in
things.
secondary buses, and especially when they're fuller, and you only have a driver, you don't have somebody in the back of the bus. Will kids, you know, try to sit down in the aisle to get more? Yes. And when they're at a stop sign, you hope they see it up there in their, you know, rear view mirror. But when you get cameras, it helps with a lot of that kind of behavior. But our kids generally are so good. We don't have a lot of bus issues, and our kids don't ride the bus very long. We have like the shortest bus routes in the universe. So.
Okay, and just one last thing, Mount Daniel update.
We didn't have this for that.
Oh, yes, it was on the Board of Supervisors agenda this morning. That's where they normally would have pulled it off if they were going to talk about it. They didn't, just kind of moved on, and it was for information only, so it seems as it's proceeding in the way that we would hope, so.
So when can we really sleep at night?
I mean, if Supervisor Faust was going to try to pull it out for review, he would have done it this morning.
So when is that meeting?
That was this morning.
today.
Oh,
So, and everything on the information, the items on the agenda went through with no objection, no discussion, nothing. So, I think we're good.
so we're good? Do we get some sort of confirmation from them?
Well, no, I mean, the action was the Planning Commission. It went to the Board of Supervisors, not for a vote, just as an information item to say, hey, your Planning Commission did this, we want to make sure everybody knows. And only if somebody wants to pull it out and say, well, the board should review it, if they don't do that, it just goes forward. So they've been notified, they had their chance to pull it out, and they chose not to.
Okay,
So that's as good as it gets.
guess we're good then.
Okay, anyone else? Last word? No? Good, we're adjourned.